Welcome to the Whole Child Sleep podcast, where we help families nurture dreams and raise wholeness. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Whole Child Sleep podcast. I'm your host, Myra Hartzheim. Today, we are tackling the topic of naps. So if your little one is struggling with poor naps during the day, you're in the right place. So the biggest factor that affects naps for kiddos is circadian rhythm and sleep-wake cycle. The circadian rhythm is not established, not mature enough to experience regular, consistent, and predictable naps until the age of around 4 months, 6 months, or older. If your kiddo is 6 months old and younger, it is normal to experience shorter, less predictable naps. When they turn 6 months old, you will then begin to recognize a more consistent morning nap that is typically longer than the other naps. That is a sign that your kiddo's circadian rhythm is maturing and that sleep-wake cycle is falling into place. Okay, so if your kiddo is 6 months old and older and you are really struggling with naps, here are some factors I would want you to consider. Number one is, again, circadian rhythm. And number two is sleep-wake cycle. So the circadian rhythm dictates the sleep-wake cycle. So the biggest factor here is circadian rhythm. And what factors affect that circadian rhythm? It's our daily rhythms during the day and primarily bedtime. So if your bedtime is fluctuating, not consistent, and not in sync with your child's chronotype, your child may be struggling with naps because of that reason. So what you'll want to do then is address bedtime, which often allows naps to fall into place and allows them to be significantly easier. So if your kiddo's bedtime is too late, that will mess with melatonin production of stress hormones as well, which will mess with your circadian rhythm, which will then also mess with your child's sleep-wake cycle, which is the cycle in which the body releases stress, and then also cools the body down, which is the time in which we are optimized to sleep and rest. So if your kiddo is struggling with sleep, look at your child's bedtime. Ensure that it is during the time that your child is ready for sleep for the night. If that's in place and your kiddo is still struggling with sleep, I want you to also consider possibly other issues that may be affecting your kiddo's sleep. If your kiddo is deficient in micronutrients or has irritation in their gut, that can also affect your child's stress hormones, stress levels, production of sleep-inducing hormones, and all of that will also throw off your child's circadian rhythm and sleep-wake cycle, which will then affect your child's ability to nap well. So if you're not sure what factor is affecting your kiddo's naps, please reach out. We'd love to help you. We're here for you, and I'll talk to you all next week. Thank you for listening to the Whole Child Sleep podcast. For references to articles discussed in this podcast or for evidence on the topics that we've discussed on this podcast, please look in the description below, or you can find the articles linked in our blog at curesleep.us. I want to give you an idea of what you can expect in terms of structure of this podcast moving forward. You can expect one podcast a week, and we will cover a topic for 2 weeks. The first week, you can expect the podcast to be more educational and informational. The following week will be more of a Q&A covering the same topic. If you have a question that you would like us to answer during the Q&A podcast, please send them in at 406-551-4083. And if you've found this podcast to be helpful, we ask that you share it. We would love to reach more tired families. We also ask that you subscribe and like and give us a 5-star review. This also helps us reach more tired families. We hope you have a beautiful day, and we will talk to you next week. By listening to this podcast, you understand and agree to the following. The content of this podcast offers the opinions of Meyer Hartzheim and her guests, and it is not intended as medical advice. It serves as an informational purpose. For personalized and medical concerns, consult your healthcare professional. The views and opinions in this podcast are our own and don't represent our employees or affiliates. The views of the guests in this podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect that of Cure Sleep Group. Our podcast and website are not for legal purposes, such as establishing a standard of care or expert witness testimony. We don't guarantee the accuracy of statements or opinions. We appreciate your assistance in maintaining content accuracy. If you find errors in our podcast or blogs, please reach out via email to support@curesleep.us. This podcast is owned by Cure Sleep LLC and presented by the Whole Child Sleep Podcast. Thank you for tuning in.